Good evening. Welcome to the Public Works, Parks, Recreation, and Environment Committee meeting for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. It's 5:30 p.m. HPA-TV will be broadcasting tonight's City Council, Public Works, Parks, Recreation, and the Environment Committee live on Comcast TV Channel 96 and Frontier TV Channel 6032. It will also be streamed live on HPA-TV.org and the HPA-TV Facebook page. It will then be made available for future viewing on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. We have a lovely group of people here with us tonight. I will start with the committee. I am the chair, Councilman Marilyn Rossetti. With me, I have Councilman John Gale and Councilman Nick LeBron. We also have, as she likes to be called, my executive assistant, Charmaine Craig. And we have our attorney, Jim Delvisco. You're there, right, Jim? Yep. Then we have guests. We have Mike Mooney, the Director of Public Works. Don't want to miss anybody. Trell Mailer, who is the Assistant Director. We have Kim Oliver, who is the Director of Families, Children, Youth, and Recreation. We have Brian Gallagher, who's the Chair of PRAC. We have Jennifer Martinez, who I believe is from Knox. We have Choice Stewart, who Recreation at the city. We have Craig Mergens. Craig, who are you here with? PRAC or Knox or both? You're wearing a double hat?
Sure, but the co-chair of PRAC.
Okay. Then we have Patrick Doyle, who's the ED over at Knox. We have Donna Swar, who you know as Donna Swar, but tonight you know as James Sanchez. I'm not quite sure why, but it'll be interesting banter later. We have, I think, is that everybody? Let's see, did I miss anybody? Anybody? Okay, then we have everybody. Great. Latecomers, you'll be late. So the first agenda item is Mayor Bronin with a company resolution that would authorize the city to renew a license agreement with, and I'm not sure if this is correct, Knox Parks Foundation for the use of two vacant city-owned parcels of land at 154 Affleck Street and 650 Broad Street at an annual rate of $1 per year property to operate and maintain community gardens. It was an agenda item number 5 at the council meeting of November 24th, 2020. Do we have a city employee that would speak to that first, please? Anyone?
Councilwoman Rossetti, this is Jim Delvisco. May I be heard?
Yes, Jim. Yep.
One item I want to point out, I'm not going to speak on the substance of this item. However, I do know that the entity is no longer called Knox Parks Foundation. It is now called Knox Inc. So if the committee is going to approve this or give it a favorable recommendation, I'm going to recommend that you just do a simple amendment of the resolution, which is to replace Knox Parks Foundation with Knox Inc. And my colleague who is working on the license agreement and who put together this resolution has already prepared a substitute resolution, which can be sent to Charmaine Craig if that is necessary. I just wanted to say that right now.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
I guess then, Patrick, let's have you speak to that, and then my colleagues can ask the appropriate questions.
Absolutely, and thank you for hosting me. Appreciate the opportunity to be before you all tonight. And just to step back a little bit, I know I see a lot of familiar faces, but I never, want to take for granted folks' kind of understanding of Knox. And really, our mission is rooted in the idea that we empower people throughout Hartford to create stronger, greener, and healthier neighborhoods. And we do that by using horticulture as a way that we can bring people together and hopefully everyone in Hartford together so that they can be a part of the solution. And we know there's really real challenges. There's a high unemployment rate in Hartford. There are issues like the urban heat island effect that create higher instances of respiratory degrees. And Hartford's a food desert where lots of people unfortunately struggle to find a way to access fresh, healthy food. So these are all issues that Knox is working on, and we do that by engaging people, because we believe the assets and the people in Hartford have everything they need to be able to solve Hartford's problems. So we really want to move that forward. We do that by planting trees, engaging volunteer and civic groups in neighborhood cleanups, helping students connect with their environments, and helping folks get back into the workforce through a green jobs program and specifically focused on the landscaping industry. I'm here before you tonight and to talk a little bit about our work growing food, and specifically the gardens on Broad Street and Aflac Street. So we managed 20 community gardens in the city of Hartford. This last year, we had over 300 people who are taking advantage of using those gardens to grow fresh food and produce for themselves and to share with their families and friends. So it was a great year. We were really excited about it. And as I mentioned, the two gardens that we have on the docket for tonight, those spaces are currently being operated by Knox's Community Gardens. They have been for some time. We had 34 folks in between those two gardens this past season, and both those gardens were full. So part of the reason we want to make sure that that we are renewing this lease and moving forward is we have the hope to hopefully build some more garden beds and do some other things in those gardens that could expand access to more people there. So I'm happy to spend some time answering questions. It was a lot of quick information there, but we're really excited in the role that Knox can play to help take what could be a blighted space and turn it into an asset for the community. Really, it's the gardeners who give that life. And so I'd like to introduce Jennifer Martinez. Jennifer is our garden coordinator at Knox and has been working in our gardens for some time. So I just would invite Jennifer to share a little bit about her experience in the gardens and some of the feedback that she's heard from some of our other gardeners as context.
Jennifer, go ahead. Yep.
Hi. So as a spirit that I've been through for the gardeners, I was one of them. I have a garden
Jennifer, we can't really hear you.
the gardens.
Maybe you move a little bit, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
It's pretty choppy.
Oh, no.
No, no.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Sort of. Go ahead, try it again.
So I'm one of the gardeners from the gardens. I work with some people in my garden. You know, I learn and I let experience of how they grow their products, food, and
Jennifer, I don't think this is working. I don't know. Can others hear her better than I can? No. Yeah, we can't really hear you, Jennifer.
I'm sorry.
Patrick, do you think you can step in?
Sure. So, and sorry for the audio issues, but you know, Jennifer really works most directly with our gardeners and specifically our garden coordinators. And I know she was excited to share some of the stories that she's heard in our gardens. One of the great things about these garden spaces is they really become a place for people to come together and to build community. So just as an example, in addition to the produce that's being grown over at the Aflac Street Garden throughout the season, we actually partnered with the Hartford Public Library. They reached out to us and they've actually got a story walk that's up right now. I think it's Llama Llama Holiday Drama. So if you walk by, they're actually using that fencing space as part of the garden to provide a little bit more for the community, that they've got that story out there that they can read. So we're always looking for ways that we can use our gardens to bring people together. I know that Jenny had a couple of stories and emails that she had received specifically from gardeners that just spoke to really how excited they are to be able to have access to this space. Specifically, one I know from a woman named Yolanda, who was a new gardener this year. I'm really excited to be able to grow tomatoes and lettuces and other things, and just very genuinely grateful for the opportunity to have access to the space and what that can mean in terms of growing food for herself. That was actually part of a new thing we did where in response to COVID, we were able to reach out and get some more people into our gardens and free of charge with a little bit of extra support, so that if they had hit a stumbling block because of the pandemic, that they had more at their disposal to be growing fresh food for themselves. So that was great to hear that she was appreciative of that. And it's just, one example of what's going on in our gardens and how folks are really taking advantage of that to be able to grow food for themselves, as well as build community and share stories and tips and community with the other gardeners in the garden.
Thank you, Patrick. I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to try to log off and log back on. But as a gardener myself, flowers, not vegetables, I know, first of all, how it can be peaceful for your mind, which we also need during this time. So I don't know if my colleagues, Councilman LeBron, Councilman Gale, do you have any questions of Jennifer or Patrick?
Yeah, so
Councilman LeBron?
yes, through you, Madam Chair. So the first thing I recommend, I definitely would like to hear Jennifer's stories. So although we wouldn't be able, and Jennifer's commentary, although we're not able to hear her tonight, it doesn't mean that she can't submit it to us, to myself, Chair Marilyn Rossetti, and Councilman Gale. I would love to hear those stories, as those things are important to us, and we definitely want to keep the ear and the positive things, particularly during the pandemic. The other thing the question I have is in regards to the pandemic is, how has Knox Inc., been adjusting, and how has that affected you as a whole, and how would that affect this particular property?
Yeah, so one of the things that was a little bit of a challenge, obviously, especially in the spring, was really making sure, with all the concerns and the safety regulations, really making sure not just that we were able to open our gardens, but we were able to do it in a way that was safe for our gardeners. So we very, very quickly got in touch with the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. They were very helpful in providing some feedback on the safety guidelines that we had put in place and procedures to make sure that we were being safe. They actually adopted what we had done to develop statewide guidelines for community gardens. I guess we were a little bit out in front on that one, which was nice. But we worked really hard to put those measures into place. And what we saw as a result is that people just came to the gardens this year. It was important in terms of growing food, but also to Councilwoman Rossetti's point, is that opportunity to have a little bit of a peace. And it's a somewhat solitary activity. So getting your hands in the dirt, I think, was important for people this year. And we certainly saw that. We had over 300 people in our gardens this year, more than any, recent history that I've been able to dig up over at Knox. So we've seen a lot of activity. 10 of our 20 gardens were full. 4 of our gardens were actually just coming online for the first time this year. And so, again, we saw a lot of activity in our gardens. We have challenges like every other nonprofit. So we've had to make some adjustments in terms of how we make sure that we have support for all the different work we're doing as an organization. One of the things that we've seen, though, is from our supporters, folks have really seen the importance of these gardens and have come forward to help make sure that we are able to maintain them, make sure that we are able to help people have all the support they need to be successful. We don't want to just get people into the garden. We want to give them true good garden space and set them up to really be successful.
Councilman?
So thank you. So as a follow-up, I've seen the one on Affleck and know where it is, and I drive by Broad Street all the time. 650 Broad Street, where are the cross streets there, just so I could just get a visual in my mind where that is?
Oh boy, now you're going to test my knowledge of cross streets. It's
a landmark, or a restaurant or a bodega?
Yeah, it's kind of it's not too far from Ward Street, but it's a little further north from there. If you're driving up on, I believe, on the left side of the road.
Patrick, it's the cross street is Russ Street.
Russ?
Yeah.
It's about a block up from the firebox on the other side, right?
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Gale?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any particular questions for Patrick or Jennifer, but I have been a continuous supporter of Knox and all of their good works over the years, and very appreciative of everything that they have to offer to the city and have done within the city. We could use a few more Betty Knox to show up along the here in the landscape at some point in time. But right now, thank you, Betty, and thank you, Knox Inc., and great job on these community gardens.
So, yes, Councilman LeBron?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Just Patrick, one last question. In regards, I consider myself a urban gardener. I just been starting. It's been about 4 years. I took this past year off, but how do you guys, does the community decide what gets planted there? And how does or is it based upon donations or costs? Like, how do you guys determine as to what get planted in these gardens?
Yeah. So this is a really interesting story, right? So with 20 gardens, I often get asked, so what kind of Knox produce do you have? And the answer that I have to that question is none. And the reason for that is because of our guidepost as an organization is really that we're a sharing organization. So what we do is we help to provide the tools that people need so that they can grow the food they want to for themselves. So we are providing the space, we're providing soil, seeds, water, everything they need to be successful. However, it's the actual gardeners themselves that are choosing what it is that they want to grow and how they want to do it. And what's really great is you see the gardeners start to share stories with each other about how they're growing food, or, hey, what is that you're doing? And, they may end up trying something new the next season because they've seen somebody else doing it. So we as an organization are not in the business of telling people what to grow. What we want to do is help give them the resources that they need, because they're putting the time in, the sweat equity in, and we just want to make sure we get them those resources they need so they can be successful in growing the food for themselves.
I see that Councilman Gale has put up a picture of one of the gardens on Broad Street.
Yes, it's awesome. I probably drove by it every day. So, Mr. Doyle, I just want to put a plug in. If you know of any gardens that are, growing the produce that makes sofrito, send me an email. Give me a call directly. I'd like to be in line for that, please. Fresh sofrito.
Or you could grow your own in the spring, Councilman.
All right,
I'm just saying.
Listen. Anyway, that's another story for another day.
Councilman Angel, who's one of the members of our green crew, had a garden over at Laurel Street this year, and I know he was growing all the ingredients he needed for sofrito. So if you ever want to come by and have a tour of what we're doing out there, I'm sure we could show that to you and make sure you have a chance to say hi to him, because I'm sure he'd tell you a story or two and maybe have some ideas for recipes and growing tips.
Thank you. That's super close to me, so that's very convenient. Thank you.
So if anything goes missing, Patrick, you'll know. So John, Councilman Gale,
Yes.
do you want to make Councilman LeBron a favorable? And what are we going to do? Do we amend this? Do we amend this now, or do we amend the name later, Jim?
I think you can amend it now. You can do that now. And as I said, it's a non-substantive amendment. You're just changing the name. That's all. and then I will make sure my colleague gets the substitute resolution to Charmaine Craig.
Okay. Gentlemen?
All right, so I'll make a motion to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation, with the understanding that once it's back at council, there will be a substitute resolution to correct the name of the organization.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, resolution passes. Thank you, Knox, for a wonderful presentation. And Jennifer,
Knox.
please do follow up with the hard copy. That brings us to our next agenda item, which we're very excited about. It's a presentation update from our director, Kim Oliver of the Department of Families, Children, Youth, and Recreation. And we did send Kim some questions ahead of time, which you do have, right, Kim? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I do.
Okay, so, my colleagues and I, when we sat down and, thought about what the questions were and what we want to see and do as a committee working with your department, we see this as the beginning of a great relationship. Not that it's been a bad relationship up until now, but I just think with what's been going on, I don't know if people know, but there's this pandemic that's been going on the last few months, and it's kind of distracted a lot of us. But we're going into 2021, and we're going into 2021 with high hopes. And we think as a committee, we'd like to see a couple of things. And one is, you coming before us quarterly. I think that would be exciting and a great way for us to stay connected. So the first question that we sent to you was, what have you spent to date on the budget in regards to recreation? So I don't know if you want to just go through the questions, you want me to read them, but how do you want to do this, Kim? We want to make it great for everybody.
Sure, I can. I do have the questions, so I can read them.
Okay.
Go through, maybe pause.
All right, great. Okay.
So, yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to speak about, in particular, recreation. Full department is Families, Children, Youth, and Recreation. But tonight I'm going to be speaking about recreation. And as mentioned earlier, also in this meeting is Troy Stewart, our Assistant Director for Recreation. The first question, in terms of the total expenditures to date, the total amount is $440,200.69. That's a 34.2% of our budget for the year. Primarily, the huge number that makes up that amount for the most part is staffing at 95%, which is $416,951. We usually use at least half of our budget just for summer. So the fact that summer was pulled back drastically this year is one of the reasons our number is so low in terms of our year-to-date expenditures. So usually in terms of our part-time employees, when we have our swimming pools open to all of our lifeguards, to all of our playground programs, to our summer camp program, and a lot of the work that we do in the summer. So other key areas, but obviously much smaller amounts. We did have food items of about $14,000 because we did have children with us year to date, including in the summer and in the fall. And we also had some supplies, only about $6,000 or so, and some other expenditures around $2,000. And by the way, what we can do is make sure that what I'm looking at is sent to all of the council members and also available on our website for the public. So any questions about that?
I don't know if my colleagues want to ask questions after each question, or we want to go to the end. Councilman LeBron.
Yes, so it was 440,000, and that's 43.2% of the budget.
Sorry, 34.2%.
34.2%.
Yeah.
How much of that was spent on staffing?
Yeah, staffing was the 95% of that number, which is $416,951.
So so a follow-up question to that. The staffing, I know we have the director, Troy Stewart. I know there's another full-time employee. How many staff are there on record? Because I know we didn't do the pools, right? This summer, is that correct?
Correct. We have 2 full-time employees, one includes Mr. Stewart, and then we have the rest of our employees, which are part-time employees, which right now we're probably looking at a roster of about 100 or so employees. The majority of those employees, we do have a very large aquatic team, which would include our lifeguards. And we also do have our recreation assistants who are not lifeguards, and some are summer only recreation workers. A lot of people who work for like our school systems, et cetera, or may have other employment during the rest of the year.
So, in regards to these employees, how did, during COVID, it was important for people to remain employed and, and to have jobs. So, were all 100 employees working or were working? Did any of them get laid off because of COVID?
So it doesn't work that way with our part-time employees. What it is because they're on the roster, they're called in. What Troy and his staff does every single year around that, beginning as early as April, but say definitely around May, June time, is they begin to do the phone calls to see for our summer staff who is available. So some people, they've decided that they are going to retire. For some people, they may have moved away, but for the most part, we have people who return every single summer. This year, what we did, and obviously Mr. Stewart is available to speak a little bit more to this, but what we did was once we knew that our pools weren't going to open, obviously that was a huge impact to our aquatic staff. We still do have some aquatic staff that work with us year round. That is also, many of them are our trainers. And also, we also have our indoor pools, especially at Parker, that has been open this year. So basically part of it is saying, okay, this is what programming was available and start working with who is available when. We do have staff with us that is approximately, I would say 30 or so members who work with us all year round, whether they are a lifeguard or a recreation assistant.
So in terms of, I know each organization or municipality has differences in terms of what's deemed part-time. It sounds like some of these folks are per diem folks, right? I think that's what you would like per diem. You call them in as needed.
Yeah, well, officially they're considered part-time. They are union employees under 1716. They are officially active employees for City of Hartford. They had to go through civil service and all of that, and are part, like I said, of 1716. What it is that it's based on what programming is available. So I wouldn't call it exactly per diem, but it is similar in the sense of it's based on a program. So for example, we did have our splash pad program that we modified from our playground program. We had a good number of sites, not exactly the same sites, not exactly the same time. So there were a need for more people in the past for our playground program. And so there might have not been the same need of, say, before maybe we wanted to have, we might have had like 25 people, and this year it would have been down to like, say, 16, just giving you an example.
Sure.
So it would be that we don't have the work, quite frankly, for people to do. That's correct.
So just the newness, when does the pay rate kick in at the city level where you have to pay full-time fringe benefits? Hourly, excuse me. When does the hourly rate, kick in where you have to pay full-time fringe?
That was recently changed. So it, I believe, is now at 30 hours, but I would want to double check. And that's per week, like 30 hours in that week. And you start making your way towards accumulating towards a full-time benefits is not automatic at that 31st hour.
And then last question, Madam Chair. There was some conversation that a lot of the, or maybe I heard it at a PrAC meeting, that there was a lot of staff being pulled in different directions outside of the recreation realm. Number one, is that true? And then number two, what were they doing and where were they being pulled?
Okay, outside of the recreation realm, so as the director of the department, I would say the employees that we transferred to Health and Human Services as part of the isolation center was a number of employees. I want to say it was maybe about 10 employees. And again, that was for the isolation center, very specific to COVID-19. As many of you may remember, that was Willie Ware. And then became the Armory. And so ended up working with Health and Human Services staff. We also supported food distribution. That is not considered officially outside of recreation, but I do want to acknowledge that. We did support that from the time frame between March and June.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions, or should I continue?
Yes, please do.
Okay. All right. The next one, it speaks a bit to this, and it was a little harder to answer, but it was, where do you see recreational activities going? And it was kind of during COVID and after COVID. What the team has done is pull together a multi-page document. So obviously I can't go through all of that right now, month by month. But I wanted to just do a couple of highlights. And again, we're going to share this information directly with council committee members, and we'll make this available online on MyRec as well for the public. So as an example, during COVID, one of the big things that happened this year is the creation of the virtual recreation center. That was something that was new for us. We had moved to MyRec. We were beginning to have certain options and opportunities for folks online, but definitely nothing like we have now. So the virtual recreation center is up. It is has a support staff. It works in partnership with others, et cetera. And there are numbers we have for that. I don't have those tonight, but we do provide those numbers at our PRAC meetings, and we can do that at our next meeting of this committee. Some of the things that were similar with a twist, though, was like Zumba. So Zumba during the summer, it was in the park, right? So like in Goodwin Park, it was outside. Usually we would use Zumba, and it would be in one of our centers, in one of our gyms, in particular in Arroyo Center or in Parker Center, mostly Arroyo Center. But we actually went out into the parks as an example. Some things stayed very similar, where we had basketball, during COVID, and we also had it after. We also did the same in terms of our work with our baseball teams. That was before and that was after. I mentioned a little bit earlier that we had to modify our Kevin Bell playground program to be a splash pad program. And I'll speak about that in a little bit. And when we talk about our programming details and strengths and weaknesses a little bit later. But because we were dependent upon the playground for that program in particular, what it meant if the playgrounds were closed, we basically shifted and said, okay, we still need to offer something to our young people. So that was completely new for us to shift it more towards our splash pads across the city. In most cases, that was right next to where the playground was. So the families weren't seeing as much of a disruption, but it definitely was a different program. And one of the things that was also different was we usually are able to provide meals when we do our playground program. And we weren't able to do that this year. Part of that was because of the expansion of the school meals program throughout the city. So there were more opportunities for families to attach to those. But just to give you an example of that. Some of the other things that we started up was like karaoke in the park, especially over at Keeney Park, which was a hit. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to go to one of those nights. So it was a lot of trying to do that kind of out of box thinking and that kind of work. What I will say is that we have not had access to some of our centers. I mentioned Willie Ware acted as our isolation center. And it also backs up the warming center that is now the old Milner on Vine Street school. We also, for Arroyo, as all of you know, Arroyo is our testing center for our city. So we didn't have access to that. which should actually be good news, and again, I'll speak to that a little bit more in a bit, is that we were having the renovations done at Metzner and actually looking forward to being able to reopen that center. So a lot of our center-based activities, we had to, again, think outside of the box, and in some cases, we're able to make that work, in some cases not. Again, I would say the virtual recreation center is probably our biggest one. We also did things like our neighborhood pick and grabs, where people could almost have like little pop-ups throughout the city for people to pick up things to be able to go and like go home and do crafts or whatever else things were in the bag, that type of thing.
Can I ask a question real quick? If we're doing virtual, which we still are, is there a reason why we can't add weekends, seeing as how it's virtual?
I think the answer is yes. The nice thing about the technology is that we can definitely do that. And our recreation team, right now, our team is used to working weekends because especially in the summer time frame, is every single day, including Sundays. Right now, when it's year long, we usually have Sundays off, but even then, that's something up for discussion. So again, I have a packet for you. And again, I apologize, this wasn't shared earlier, but I was going to go on to the next question. So I didn't know if anybody else wanted to talk about or have a question about programs during or after COVID. Yes, I see.
Councilman LeBron.
Yes. So through you, Madam Chair. So in terms of this point last year, so 2019, pre-COVID, right? Going from June through now, and then comparison to, COVID, June through now. What percentage of programming, did you try or was affected? I don't know if I'm framing my question correctly, but, was it 10 different programs that Recreation ran, and this year was just 2, one of them being virtual? Just in terms of the totality of the Recreation Department, how many programs directly were impacted because of COVID?
I don't have that exact number for you because I actually didn't count it up, but I actually have the details for you in the packet, so I can follow up with that number.
Thank you. And then the second question I have in terms of the virtual recreation, you said you were going to send how much staff it takes to do the virtual recreation?
Well, we actually have one of our assistant community recreation counselors who is a part-time employee, but staffs that. She obviously does it in partnership with her colleagues, but she is a person who is assigned to support that.
And then the other programs, I know you had your neighborhood pick and grabs, you had karaoke in the park, Zumba, basketball, baseball, and the splash pads. How many of those were recreation led and how many of those were partnerships?
All the ones I just spoke to were all recreation led programs. Some of the partnership programs that we've had, and maybe let's give an example of in the past in terms of pre-COVID versus where we are now. We have a great relationship with Special Olympics. We've done some really great programming with them at our centers. We haven't done that thus far since COVID pandemic has been in play. However, we have things like, Double Dutch. We have that kind of type of programming that we actually do in partnership. We lead all of the aquatics ourselves. I'm just trying to find another one. We have our relationship with Catholic Charities that continues. It looks a bit different. Catholic Charities is our organization that's at our Parker Center as part of the family center there. I would say, and that's also part of our Vision Center work as a center. The difference there has been before there was like dinner and a story, certain activities we did together, like we would do and Halloween together, type of things. I'm not able to do that right now. However, we do offer people to come to the center for appointments, as usually Catholic Charities is providing supports to families, and we didn't want to interrupt that.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome. Good evening, Director Oliver. It's always nice to see you. Just and I've learned how to use this wonderful share a screen feature here. So I'm going to try again to do that. I don't know if that'll work. What I've got, that should be on your screen. Is that in fact the program for the department for December that I'm looking at? Are you able to see that?
That's our virtual program. In December, I just want to point out, after the governor's executive order team sports for the winter, we had to pull back on our basketball program that we were working with our young people under, I want to say they were Troy, under 16 years old. We had our different teams. We did end that program earlier than expected because of that executive order, as well as the swimming.
Well, that certainly makes sense. When I'm looking here, there looks to be stuff in the first 2 weeks of December, and then the next 2 weeks of December, there doesn't seem to be anything. Is that, will that get filled in, or is that really the month of December at this point?
That's how we're looking for this month. Like, for example, which is very different than last month. So last month, we also even did our special program for when schools are traditionally closed between the holiday breaks. The calendar was pretty full because as I'll mention a little bit earlier for one of our other questions, we have a lot of in-person programming. A lot of our programming is based on doing things in person. So it's definitely a pullback this year, and it definitely it looks very slim compared to last year.
And so, in understanding, I think what you said earlier, that you've only spent 34% of the budget, and usually you spend almost half your budget just in the summer alone. It strikes me then that you at this point you're on target to have quite a budget surplus. Not quite a budget surplus. I mean, these are modest numbers, and I understand that, but I'm just wondering, has there been any thought given to hiring, using some of that money to hire some folks to help you come up with additional innovation programs, or new stuff that we haven't done in the past?
Yes, and not in terms of more, I would say, from a consultant perspective. So one of the things I was going to mention was actually that later on in the presentation, but I
don't want to get ahead of you. Talk about it later. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
But to Councilman Gale's point, if we're doing things virtually, as we all are, and why would that calendar not be full?
Well, I mean, we do have we usually do a shutdown, and last year or the year before was one of the first years that we actually made sure that we were packed during the holidays, just to let you guys know it in terms of that context.
But I mean, for virtual, I mean, some of it would just be perfunctory. Why couldn't it be full? Particularly for 2020, which is so difficult for children.
I think that's a fair feedback. I mean, we're continuing to add to the virtuals along with our work that we do in terms of social media, pushing out certain activities. So we could definitely do that.
I mean, I would just love to see, particularly for 2020, when so much has been taken for children or set aside, and we have an opportunity. I do things I never thought I would do because I'm able to do them in a way, where you're not, going out at 8 at night so I would love to see that calendar full.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to, through you, Madam Chair, I just want to piggyback too, especially now during COVID and, and probably the particular part of 2021, considering what we all know on a national scale in regards to communities of color and urban neighborhoods and the reluctance towards the vaccine. And Hartford's no different from the most recent things I hear from the Health and Human Service side. It would be, we can't expect that virtual is going to be part of our lives for at least for a few. The other thing I would just say is that, in terms of the recreation department, I know that you guys are functioning during the weekday. Is it safe to assume that it's done during the week, the evenings of the weekdays? Or is it something that it's done virtually? You post something, because I have different programs that do different things. They'll post something on YouTube and then have the kids engage, or they go live at a certain time. And I'm trying to act like I even know what all that means. But the point is the access for the kids, because if they're in school in the daytime, then they need access in the
Right.
evenings.
It is mixed strategies, so that there are certain things that you can do basically self-driven or on demand at any time, whether they're based on video uploads, that type of thing. There's also basically what is the live streaming portion as well.
Thank you.
Councilman Gale's getting himself some coffee or something. So I think we're moving on to the next piece. Okay.
So this kind of flows from that. The next question was, tell us your strengths and weaknesses in terms of staffing and programming. So in terms of staff, many of our staff are highly credentialed, have been here for years, have strong areas of expertise, a very strong connection with community, usually part of the community themselves. Where I would say in terms of our weaknesses, we've acknowledged the need to continue to diversify our staff, especially into spaces of content expertise, and also in terms of having new employees, because there was a time where our hiring definitely slowed down. And so what we've been doing is really pushing for our talent pipeline, especially our younger talent pipeline, to grow. We've had some success for that. That was around immediately our aquatics program. And because that lost some momentum this year because of the pandemic, but we are actually in the process of hiring now and looking for new folks in recreation, again, with that content expertise and just interest in different interests. The other thing that I did right here, and I was mentioning earlier, was in terms of our virtual technology skills. One of the things is that, our team and our infrastructure was based on, for the most part, what I'm going to call traditional recreation, and much in terms of the virtual space and the leading edge space. Our team has worked hard over the past 2 years to really move our work to MyRec. One of the reasons that if you click on recreation, you actually go immediately to MyRec and trying to put all of our information there. Is something that our team has had to skill up on and train up on. And even the work in terms of the virtual work, quite frankly, that was in response to the pandemic that we're currently in. So in terms of our areas to be able to expand, I would definitely say that. We've been fortunate in terms of our partnerships to how we could even expand that further. We have a great partnership right now with ESPN and the X Games, and really learning how they're doing some of their gaming work and hoping to connect that with our work in recreation. But again, all of that is just emerging. In terms of the programming side, while we do have definitely a diverse portfolio of programming, and it was strong centers. We lead aquatics for the city because we have the most aquatic facilities and actual lifeguards. And we base a lot of our work based on the surveys and asking people what they're interested in terms of recreation. We have a very high dependency on, as I mentioned earlier, in-person programming. It's very much almost kind of like high-touch in-person programming. We've also know that in terms of our communications and marketing, we've been working on this for some time and knowing that we need to get better at that. But what ends up happening for us is people who come to recreation come back to recreation repeatedly. So one of the things, going back to the surveys and what we're going to be doing a little bit differently is doing some surveys based on our social media for folks who might not have always come to our centers, so that we're not just getting interest in ideas just from the folks who are coming to us repeatedly and not expanding to new people who would want to come to recreation. We have found that in terms of our products, while we're very proud of our aquatics, there's a strong preference, especially in certain sites, for family swim, which means we're not able to do the aquatics. Give me one moment.
Curious, got it? Hydrate, always hydrate. I'm curious, which sites are those? I'm just curious.
Colt Pool Center in particular loves family swim. By far our busiest. It's a great pool center, but it becomes very difficult because you need to kind of clear that pool to do your swimming lessons. So we've been looking at whether or not we need to go to like a special hours for swim lessons versus building it in our regular day. So if we're going like, for example, 12 to 8, from 12 noon to 8 o'clock at night for our swimming pools, do we try to open up earlier for our swim lessons? I know in the past, we've also tried to do certain days. The other thing that's hit us that actually made that even difficult was we had a lot of heat waves in the past couple of summers. So heat waves, we immediately go also to family swim. What I would tell you is a lot of our people, and Troy, feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, they just show up at the pool centers. They don't always look at the schedules, and they expect to be able to go in with their families. So the good news is people want to be, in our pools, and we definitely greatly varies actually in terms of which pool center you're at. And like I said, Colt by far as our busiest pool center right now, followed by Arroyo, then Goodwin, then Keeney. In fact, I think Parker might sometimes do a little bit better than Keeney, quite frankly. But again, we're trying to respond to what people are interested in, but then what that does is bring up this other conflict that we're not able to do the swim lessons, which is obviously a detriment, especially in the urban center. I also mentioned this a little bit earlier too. A lot of anchoring for our programming is based on our centers, it's based on our playgrounds, and it's based on our partnerships with the schools. So definitely hit during COVID. And again, this just tells you as we're trying to pivot to this thinking in terms of the virtual world and using more technology. And I talked a little bit about the last thing, which was the marketing piece. We have a lot of word of mouth marketing. Is very natural. People are very networked. They tell each other about X, Y, and Z. And then what we find is that we are trying to put stuff on. We do have flyers. We have people who have a mix of digital access or comfortability. So we're still doing flyers, plus trying to put stuff on social media. And we're still trying to find that right balance because it still feels a bit like those who know about recreation come to recreation, and those who don't. Any questions about that? That was both about staffing and programming.
Councilman LeBron?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Director, it sounds, and I'm so hopeful, it sounds like when you were talking about swimming, is there a chance of aquatics this year? Is it possible? Is it feasible? I know we have the scheduling issue, but I think our community has adapted, right? And with reservations, and pretty much everyone has smartphones, and so once they learn the first time they show up, then they know that they have to reserve. Is there potentiality for swimming this upcoming summer?
I am also very hopeful because the work that we were doing at Parker was based on the reservation system, and that seemed to be working. Now, I will acknowledge, though, that our population that will come to like the Parker Center for our pools are not always the same population that will come to like a space like Colt, right? But I'm extremely hopeful. I mean, to your point, I think now that our new normal is understanding their health and safety protocols, understanding how we have to manage the locker rooms. As most people know, for swimming, at least in fluorinated waters, like in our pools, the issue usually is actually getting to the pool. And once you leave the pool, when you're in the pool, there is a possibility of transmission. You do need to be somewhat distanced, which may not be fun for our folks. but you can do it, and you're probably in a cleaner environment than you usually would be. But I am actually, I am hopeful.
So I'm a swimmer, so I'm biased in swimming, and I believe in the skill of swimming. That I think it's something like most people should have. So just some suggestions in regards to trying to make pools work is, I don't, the lane dividers, right? There's potential for them. And then also you can, where you can segment off the pool where folks can stay in their certain areas. And then the reservation system, 45 minutes, an hour. Again, people will learn. At the beginning, you're going to have a crowd show up the door and people are going to be upset, but eventually they will learn, just like everything else. And so, to have those divisions and those dividers in the pool, and then the other part that's important is the cleaning, right? And so there needs to be really detailed cleaning in between. So let's say if it's 45 minutes or an hour that we want to give, this group first, then you transition and take 15 to a half an hour to clean the what's the names, to get the ladders to get out the pool, to do the locker rooms, spray the locker rooms, or maybe they don't even use the locker rooms. Maybe they come in their bathing suits like you would, at the beach. You go in their bathing suits and then you change, in your car. That's what we did as kids. So I don't know, just the pools are so critical, and I just remember the pools being such an important part of my life growing up in Hartford, and I would love to see them open, or at least do everything that we can to keep them open, because come this summer this year, I think we would have 18 months or at least a year plus change of knowledge around COVID and be more informed to make better decisions in terms of the operationalization. I would agree that this past June, it was still different. Like what we know now is different from what we know in June, but what we'll know this June of 2021 will be so much more than we know now. So just I would keep my fingers crossed and prayerful for hopefully we can make that happen. Obviously, there's a lot of external variables, but that's just my plug for swimming.
Definitely. Thank you, Councilman.
Love a plug for swimming also. Councilman Gale.
I'm good for the moment. Yeah,
You're good
thank
for the
you.
moment. Okay. So where are we? We're in the home stretch, so to speak.
Yes. So the last question was, what do you see as council and committee's roles, and how can we be helpful? So one of our big issues I mentioned earlier is the marketing and communication piece of it, and getting to more people, especially those who actually don't know about recreation or never known about recreation, et cetera. We would love to also partner with council members on the actual activities and the events that we actually do. And admittedly, as we reflect, knowing that we could do a better job of letting you guys know when those events are, especially in the past pre-COVID when we've had some of the really big events, but also being able to bring new people in. It took a lot for us to get and move to MyRec. That was very new for my department. When it was asked, most of my team members, while skilled in so many things, not so much skilled in how to do like MyRec, spent a lot of time on it, and happy that more and more people are getting used to looking to MyRec as a resource. I'm hoping that all of you would consider joining MyRec as families, and also providing us honest feedback about, we were just talking about the calendar for December, or, what's working and what's not working as much. Our team continuously tweak and move, saying we have information about our COVID-19 protocols out there, et cetera, but we want to be helpful there. The other piece about recreation that I think is really important is, again, connecting with people in terms of their interests. You choose to come to recreation. We're proud of the fact that usually we have 40,000 individuals, that actually come, unduplicated individuals that actually come to Hartford Recreation every single year. we know that's still not everybody. And we know that we have certain people in our surrounding towns that think, hey, why don't we go over here and take advantage of these facilities or programs that some of our own Hartford people don't know. I think that's probably our biggest issue. I appreciate the feedback in terms of the virtual recreation center. We have partnered with some organizations on some of the work that they are doing and trying not to duplicate efforts and trying to figure out how we can better coordinate with that. A lot of the work that we do is how can we be cost effective and smart and try to get as much to the masses as possible. And usually, spend as little as we can. The other piece that I think is really important is a lot of the work that we do in my full department, but in recreation is really important, is we know that in youth development, your interests usually motivate you in terms of your learning in other parts of your life. So you're talking about whether engagement in terms of going to school, whether it's staying out of trouble, all these things are connected with community and serving community, and just also being examples and champions for us when possible. And like I said, us making sure you guys have that information to know when those opportunities are there. So looking forward to, as you said, Chairwoman Rosati to
Rhymes with spaghetti. Just remember that.
But just how we continue to strengthen this relationship so that, again, making sure we're getting others into recreation. Because if I said to someone more recently, like, my rec is not your rec and your rec is not my rec, right? And so how is it that we're getting enough so that people are truly really interested in participating and we're meeting people's interests and needs?
And Director Oliver and Mr. Stewart, I'm going to speak for myself, feel like I'm, pushing you a little, this is really important to me. It's a passion for me, as I'm sure it is for you. And I think we need to push ourselves. We've realized during this time, I think more than ever, the things we can do when pushed. So, if I'm saying sometimes some things, why can't we do this? I think let's just, try to embrace that kind of why can't we attitude. Try it. And then if it doesn't work, that's another thing, but it's different from not trying at all. So I hope this is a relationship that grows, and maybe someday soon we'll do it in person. I don't know when that will be, but I hope at some point. So do any of my colleagues have questions or statements? Well, Councilman LeBron.
Yeah, so Director Oliver and Troy, you've been here, so whoever can, Mr. Stewart, whoever can fill in. You talked about MyRec, right? I know with this committee specifically, we had, particularly there was a resolution around MyRec. We've engaged Director Looney around MyRec. There is, I believe he's put a plan in place, and I know he's on the call here, to improve MyRec. Can you tell me about that intersectionality between rec and MyRec, and explain that? Because I know it was on your pluses and minuses, or your pluses and deltas, and it was part on your delta side. But specifically about MyRec, because my understanding, and from what I heard from Director Looney, it's a pretty robust program. The challenge is people need to learn it.
So yeah, definitely can do that, and I would let Director Looney also feel free to chime in, and also Mr. Stewart if you like. So we utilize the way my department utilizes MyRec as opposed to Department of Public Works, and I'm going to speak in generalities here, is this a little bit different. While we do have some reservations that we're doing, we were talking about some program reservations a little bit earlier, but we also, previous to the or before the pandemic, also had our own facility where people could rent rooms. For the most part, most of that is like the field reservations and a lot of the other work that actually Department of Public Works handles. My team, what we were using it as, we have family information that we would gather at different events. We would have our calendars, our contact information. We use it literally as our set of web pages for the division for recreation. Troy, I don't know if you want to add something to this here. But any other thoughts? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, you muted yourself again.
There you go.
Okay, here I am. Oh, okay. No, basically, as Kim was saying, is that we use it more so as a focus. What we were trying to start up was even membership inside our centers, trying to have all our centers communicate with each other so we'll know what type of activities each adult child was doing. We had a combination of making sure that all of our rooms had reservations for. We knew what time and who was inside there. The only thing that we didn't take into consideration, and something that we are looking at, was that when people had reservations to have parties or whatever inside our building, we never kept track of the numbers that were coming in from them, but we only just counted the individual who did the reservation for the for it. So I'll give you an example. Like, for example, when we have the individuals renting out the multi-purpose room over at a Royal for a homeless dinner. Only thing that we would count was the individual, but we didn't count all the individuals who came inside our building. For us doing like health fairs or whatever, I can go down a list of all the stuff that we have been doing inside our buildings that reservations have been for, but we never counted those folks as part of our folks. And I think that we should have counted those folks because they're in our building and we are doing the job. I want to write it down. But somebody's talking. So that's what I'm sorry about that. Go ahead, King.
No, that was perfect. So I think it was a great example. I mean, we built up a good number of families inside MyRec, but to Troy's point, building the rosters and thinking of the rosters in that different way. Not so much. So, for example, we had the book giveaway, we Parker, and the art fair giveaway in the same year, which brought out hundreds and hundreds of people, but we couldn't went to both of them, right? So it's kind of going to the point of that you made, that people getting really being trained on the system, quite frankly. Our team has learned the system hands-on. I would love an opportunity for the formal training with it, and also some of the analytics that would also go with the system, for how, the being used, or people, and the way that we believe that it is, that kind of thing, to be able to validate some of that, but also to inform it better as well.
The system, I can say this much, the system does work. And what we see examples of it, even when we start our leagues and stuff like that, we just need the software to upgrade it to make sure that we can get it. Other towns have upgraded their system, but we have the basics system. And I'm just talking on the recreation level. I'm not talking about the parks. I don't know what's going on with parks and the fields and all that other stuff. That has nothing to do with me. But I'm just talking on the recreation side. We have a lot of capabilities that we can use it for. And also we can get instant information, statistics and stuff like that real fast. More so if we had an upgraded system.
The next question in terms of MyRec, because it is something that this committee has was made aware of. Madam Chair, is it fair to say that? And so, Director Looney, is there any plans to incorporate? I know we've talked at length about MyRec. Is there any plans to assist the recreation department with some of the key things that they need help with, or at least some kind of training, or as such, Director?
Madam Chair, yes. Because now through fall we've been working on a number of tasks, such as putting together standard operating procedures and user guides for the MyRec system. We're in a position where we can certainly work with Kim, Troy, and their staff in providing the level of training that they need to really understand the system. So I believe you referred to it earlier. The system is quite robust, and there are a lot of things you can do with it based upon the version that we have now. But Jessica Mercier and Mark Dowd in my office, I think would certainly be able to assist the recreation folks in that regard, particularly during the winter when we may have a few additional hours where we can schedule training and things like that.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, if you could bake that into the plan, that'd be great. Because in terms of maximization and maximizing things, I think oftentimes, with software, it's like a car. You get a Cadillac with all these bells and whistles, but if you're not using it, then it doesn't make sense. You might as well get a Hyundai. Speaking of maximization, one of the blessings about the city of Hartford is that I believe, and Councilman Gale, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you're the stats guy, Hartford has the biggest parks per square footage ratio in the country. So with that being said, we know that one of the key things around coronavirus is social distancing. And so, but we have this blessing of space and this plethora of space. And Director Looney said that he's willing to work with MyRec in terms of spacing. Is there any plans or, are we planning for the spring, regardless of the scenario, doing some outdoors activities, face-to-face activities and maximizing this beautiful spaces that we have?
So, and that was directed to me, Councilman.
Whoever wants to answer. I'm sorry, Troy. I feel so bad. Like I should have been asking you questions, and then Kim. And so I apologize about that. But whoever wants to answer.
I can answer part of that question before Kim does. We're working real closely with Health and Human Services and a lot of other individuals who are out there dealing with outdoor activities. We have been in communication even with the Audubon Society and some other folks. We're looking at, we were trying to look at stuff. See, what happened with us is that every time when we're starting to move forward, we're told that we have to stop. And we just don't know when it means stop or go or when we can go. It's just confusing for us. But we do, as Kim said, we do have a list of stuff of what we were going to do to compare to what we are going to do. And the thing is that's confusing us is that when we hear that you have to stop, then we're like, okay, now we have to recalibrate and figure out what do we have to do next. But like you said, outdoors is something that we can do all the time. Like Donna gave us a good with the stars and stuff. I forgot the astrology. I'm right, the astrology. Yeah, I mean, that was a good, something that we can do with it, families to go outside at night to look at the stars and just see the different type of things. I mean, so we're getting different things coming to us and we're looking into those things. Those things, like you said, it shouldn't be something that's, should be something that's going to hit us on the hand unless something real bad in COVID, tell us we can't even go outside. So I think that, yeah, you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, I do know that there are other recreation departments, and again, we're a city and we have to be cautious, and we live in a litigious society, so we always have to kind of start and stop. And I think in Hartford we have to operate differently, but to our uniqueness. But with other cities and towns, they did have operational recreation program. So with that being said, is there any kind of statewide shared recreation association that we can partner with and maybe get the lead? My idea is that if we are a part of them, and particularly if we're a paying member, right? Like those are the type of things that from the legislative side, that they should be able to navigate that web of legalities and rules and all the stuff that changes, quite frankly, every day. And so that's what those associations are for. So number one, do we have that? And number two, if not, can we do that? And then number three, can we, model some of the other things that people are doing across the state?
So we're part of Connecticut Recreation Park Association. We are a paying member, and we actually lead a lot of their work in certain areas. I just want to point that out, especially in terms of aquatics. The thing that I would also want to point out is we have definitely had to push ourselves internally to think about fall and winter recreation in a different way as it relates to outdoors. A lot of our work in the summertime was all about the outdoors, even early fall. We are used to being able to go into our centers and not having to worry about social distancing. So things like, okay, do we have, going snow sledding ready to go? Well, no, we don't usually think of it that way, but we have an amazing park system that allows for us to be able to do that. So we are pushing that. The other thing I do want to acknowledge is that to the point you made, Councilman, a lot of the other towns, and also we connect with also other urban areas across the country, listening to their different ideas, and maybe I can give some examples of that. But, people are also looking at what resources they have in their towns. And we also try to figure out things that maybe don't require as much equipment so that it can be accessible to more young people. And also right now, shared equipment is a challenge, as you know, with the COVID pandemic in particular. So some things that we usually would, not think twice about in terms of, we're going to share the same little sled going up and down several times, in Keeney Hill or something. It's something that now we're being obviously extra cautious about. But Troy, I didn't know if you wanted to share any examples of anything with the association or even with the National Association.
Yes, one of the things that we're very grateful for, I think it was last year that we had we did a sister city type of thing with the Albany, New York, where we had they came to us and we came to them and had an understanding of what they do, because they have similarities of something that was requested a while ago from PRAC. Also, we had a chance to talk to some people in Chicago and some other bigger cities to look at how they do things compared to how we do things, so that we can see how the similarities and how we can change some of the stuff, because they have to deal with bigger masses of people. And if you deal with bigger masses of people and they're handling it right, that means we can handle it right in some ways, because we're a smaller city. So we're taking a look at all these different type of things that we've been partnering with the National Recreation and Parks Association, as well as the Connecticut Parks Association. So we have organizations that we are working with and trying to make see what we can leverage what they're doing and compared to what we're doing.
And to both of you guys, thank you for being the lead at the associations. What I would recommend is that maybe they should pay us if we're the lead of them. But anyway, I say that jokingly. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I certainly recognize that recreation covers a lot of turf, to use pun intended. We're trying to deal with adults, we're trying to deal with youth, we're trying to deal with organized youth programs that are done by others, organized youth programs that we do, likewise with adult programs, and there's a lot to it. I actually come from, and I know several of us, all of us on the council side here have all made comments in the past that we can harken back to times in the city when we had a much more robust recreation program in the city. And in large part, that robust recreation program was robust because we had a great partnership apparently with the schools. I don't know, I wasn't in government then, but what I know is from, somebody who utilized the programs, and there were, we heard the superintendent of schools the other day tell us there are 39 schools in Hartford. So here's 39 other potential buildings that can provide access. And, and I have to say, and by the way, what I'm talking about right now has nothing to do with COVID. I'm talking about post-COVID. I've got great confidence. Our Connecticut-based Pfizer is going to come up with a vaccine, and we're all, 6 months from now, we're going to be out there. But if it's not 6 months from now, it'll be 8 months from now. And that's what I'm talking about. Once we're out of COVID and once, we're back to, let's figure out how we can make rec the best rec ever. I would certainly love to see us get back into the schools. I've been distressed for a number of years at the fact that and I know I'm oversimplifying it, but it seems like there's just two places in Hartford. You know, there's Parker and there's Arroyo, and I know there's more, but you know, it just does seem like it's unfortunate. And Director Oliver, I want to tell you, you know, as a guy who looks at the budget every year, I'm really happy when departments come in and say they saved money, but not you. I don't want you to save a penny on rec. I want you to overspend on rec. I'm serious about that.
Please do.
If you've got savings, yeah, I mean, there are other departments, fine. Save all you can. We need it. You know, we saw that bankruptcy looming, you know, a while ago. But in your department, spend it. And I, you know, and that's also by way of dovetailing with, in the last budget cycle, the three council members who are in front of you right now, among others, led an effort to make sure that rec got more money. And we haven't really spoken about that tonight, but we did provide another $150,000 to the recreation budget, which again, you know, I wish we could spend a lot more, but I want you to know that that's where our heart is. In part, we do want to be partners and help on the council side, getting our recreation program up and serving more kids from more facilities throughout the city. So I just wanted to put that out there so you have it in mind. We're here to help in any way that we can. And you know, we're all looking forward to doing the best we can for the kids in Hartford so that everybody's benefiting from it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gale. And Director Oliver, let's have that conversation about those 39 schools, because there's ample opportunity for broadening. So, you know, we got a budget coming up. It's around the corner again. Councilman LeBron, anything further?
No, I just, you know, just want to thank you guys for taking time out of your day and trying to put plans together. COVID has impacted everything tremendously, but, you know, coming out when the weather gets warmer and hopefully for the summer, just being optimistic about, you know, being able to, you know, again, I'm a big swimming guy, so, you know, and the importance of that. And definitely we'll circle back on the 39 schools and see what that looks like, but also you know, maybe at some point, and Director Oliver, I know you and I talked, but just formally about the 150,000.
So thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to our guests. I'd like to take just 1 minute to thank Public Works, not only the folks who are with us tonight, but just the people who do the work every day. They did the leaves on my street recently. I think it was truck 396 or 69. They're just, you know, they really just went over and above. I want to thank PRAC and all the work they do. I want to thank the Elizabeth Park Conservancy and the tree, which I won't get to see because I don't go into City Hall, but I saw a picture of it and it's beautiful. You know, the gardeners and Elizabeth Park Conservancy put that together. I want to thank the people that got Goodwin Park going again, the Holiday Light Fantasia, just to be able to drive by that. You know, my husband made me put up our Christmas tree like 2 weeks before Thanksgiving because he said he needed some lights in his life. So I just, you know, I'm amazed at what we have been able to do. I'm amazed what we've gone through. I am looking forward to a light at the end of the tunnel, but I really can't thank everybody enough for their time, effort, enthusiasm, and I hope that we will all have a better 2021. So with that said, if there's nothing else, I want to wish everyone happy holidays, and we'll talk to you soon.